Matt Sargent with ABC Acres out in Hamilton, Montana. Today we're out in our tree belts. We're going to be visiting a few of our trees and looking at the companion plants or the guild plants with them and doing some chop and drop, talking about some of the decisions that go into the chopping dropping and the hows and whys. Right now we're at a chestnut tree. We have some silverberry, aka buffalo berry next to it, a nitrogen fixer, some lupine, and some comfrey. We're going to be chopping and dropping everything except for the chestnut because that's what we want to promote growth for. Couple considerations when you're chopping and dropping and mulching with plant materials from your guilds. You generally want to chop and drop when evaporation does not exceed precipitation. We're in the middle of July in Montana. It's not raining. In theory, in an arid climate like we're in, now is not the time to be chopping and dropping. However, we have irrigation, and part of why we're chopping and dropping right now is that way we're out in the tree belts and I can double check all the irrigation, make sure everything's running. So we have our artificial rain from the precipitation. Other things to keep in mind when you're chopping and dropping is depending on the regrowth and the root structure of the plant you are chopping, you don't want to take too much off. So with this comfrey here, I'm going to grab a good handful, make sure that I'm not going to hit my irrigation. For the comfrey, I'm going to use our little Japanese sickle knife. I'm going to cut it about 6 inches high. I don't want to cut it all the way to the ground. By taking it all the way to the ground, that means it's going to have to use more of its root or more of its reserve energy in the root structure to rebound. And I'm going to take what I've cut and spread it around as mulch. And you see I've left a few intact leaves. That's going to give it the ability to continue photosynthesizing and not having to use up all of its reserve energy in its root structure to come back. Do a very similar thing with the lupine. I'm not going to take all of it, just a little bit. Leave some of the leaves so it can bounce back. The reason we're chopping and dropping the comfrey is what we consider a dynamic accumulator. It's got a deep taproot. It's drawing up a lot of nutrients from the soil. And then when we get that on the surface and let it biodegrade, it's going to be putting those nutrients right in the feeder zone of our chestnut tree. One of the drawbacks to comfrey is it does like a lot of nitrogen. It's what we call a heavy feeder. So by having the lupine next to it and the silverberry, which are both nitrogen fixers, when we chop and drop them, as they use up some of their reserve energy in the roots and that part of the root dies back, the nitrogen fixing bacteria that have colonized the roots there no longer have something to live off of. They're not being fed by the plant. That nitrogen is released into the soil and available to the chestnut and the comfrey. So when it comes to chopping and dropping the silverberry, the buffalo berry, we don't want to remove all of the leaf mass. We definitely want to leave some, but what we can do is we look to pruning it. So if we say this is our central leader, it's definitely kind of the tallest. If I cut this back, it's going to promote the rest of the plant to be more shrubby. I'm going to take the rest of these leaders, I'm going to cut them a little bit lower. And there you go. We're still leaving a good 30 to 40% of the leaf mass. That way it's not starting over from scratch. We're going to head on down the tree belt and take a look at a few other things you can think about while you're chopping and dropping. All right, we're further down the row. And believe it or not, we do have a chestnut here, as well as what appears to maybe be a black locust planted with it. And these two are being dwarfed by the lupine that's planted around them. So we're not going to go crazy chopping this lupine. We're going to chop some because we want them both to get a boost of nitrogen to, get up and break the canopy. but we also don't want to take this all down to the ground and expose them to the sun that they haven't seen a lot of. Sun's really intense. We're supposed to have highs in the hundreds in the next couple days, so we definitely don't want to fry them. So what I'll probably do is just thin the outside perimeter here, still leaving them a decent amount of canopy to shade them. See what else we got. All right, we're a little further down the line. You can see here we've got 2 chestnuts, some lupine, and the silverberry. The 2 chestnuts are part of our 2-in-1 tree planting. You can look that up on our YouTube channel for more specifics, but basically we've got the 2 of them, and we're encouraging them to compete with each other, and right now they're neck and neck. Probably next year, when there's a clear tree that has an advantage, we'll select that one and chop and drop the other. But right now we're going to just do a little bit of cleanup, and that is a chop and drop technique. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup with the lupine and the silverberry. And one more thing I want to touch on is, when you're doing this, if you're looking for more plant material, this is a great time of year to be collecting some softwood cuttings or even some hardwood cuttings to propagate more. Might not be doing that with the silverberry, but when we get to some of the plants where we've got some gumi nearby, I'm definitely going to be propagating more gumi. And the gumi and the silverberry can propagate very similar to how we propagate our elderberry with our willow tea juice. And you can look that up in our propagating elderberry, which we will link to at the end of the show. So I'm going to grab my shears. We're going to start with cutting this silverberry. And I'm pruning it from the top down, because right now this guy, since we've got the 2 chestnuts competing with each other for light, I'm going to encourage this guy to be nice and bushy, so it's taking up more space in this lower area, really encouraging the chestnuts to reach up higher, since the lower part of their current canopy is dominated by silverberry and lupine. And don't get in such a rush while you're doing this that you accidentally grab the tree you're trying to promote growth and whack it down. That wouldn't be too fun. All right, and as I look on down the line, a lot of this is going to look a lot like what we've already been doing. You might see some oak trees or some oak trees or some maple trees instead of the chestnut, but a lot of the decisions we're going to be making are very similar, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. At this point, I want to thank you for joining us again this week, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, we love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, and happy growing.